Welcome, everyone. You are here at the Break into Software Engineering event. While we're getting started, we're going to wait a couple minutes before we jump into the event. Feel free to enter our free software engineering bootcamp giveaway. You just enter here on this link. You can also scan the QR code. We'll be giving one free entry at the end of the event. So it costs you nothing. You just enter the giveaway and then we'll be announcing it. Looks like we've got quite the crowd already. 385 participants. And we still got probably another minute or two before we'll get started. All right. Okay. Well, welcome everyone. Let's get going. So you're here at the Breaking into Software Engineering event hosted by Leland. We'll jump into our panelists in a second. If you've not signed up for Leland, you can sign up here. We'll also have a link at the end for you to sign up. So very quick walkthrough. We're going to do some welcome and introductions, jump right into the panel. We want this to be as helpful as possible. And so like we recognize the Q&A is usually the most important part. And then we'll have a final word at the end. This is also when we'll be announcing the bootcamp winner. Okay, intro. I'm on part of the Leland team. We also have two more Leland team members on the call. They'll be helping drop links in the chat. But more importantly, we want to jump right into our panelists. So Michelle, let's get started with you if you just want to give us a quick intro and background. Sorry, you're muted.
Hi, sorry about that. I've been working in tech for 15 years, and apparently I don't know how to use the mute button. Let's see if I can do a little better now. I've been working at Netflix for 5 years now as a senior software engineer. One of the great things about working for so long is that the people I've mentored and coached from the beginning of my career to now, I've been able to watch them grow and succeed from new grads to junior engineers to mid to senior, and just really watching people go from the beginning to the end has been really fantastic for me. I've also am a speaker, so I'm a professional speaker. I've spoken at over 30 conferences all over the world. It really brings me joy to teach. So any way I can do it, whether speaking, coaching, working on my podcast, is really what I like to do.
Great, perfect. Okay, thank you, Michelle. Let's jump to Zando.
All right, happy to be here. I have been working in tech for 10 years or so. At a number of different companies, had some experience early on at large tech companies, via some internships and some early work experience. Felt like startups were more, I guess, applicable to my skill set and where I enjoyed working more. So pivoted there, and I've been working at a number of startups since then. I just got muted. Anyway, I've been working at Leland for 3.5 years, building this. Excited to have you all here and chat some more about breaking into software engineering.
Perfect. And then Jason, why don't you wrap us up?
Yeah, hey everyone, I'm Jason. I'm the youngest by far on this panel. I just graduated earlier this year from Duke. I professionally have worked at Amazon a few times as an intern, both on retail and on AWS. And I currently work at Amazon right now. I think I've also worked, part-time at startups during university, just not very big commitments, but things that my friends founded and just through personal connections. So I think I've gotten a pretty good mix already into the tech industry, both in big tech and smaller initiatives. And I think the more interesting thing about me is like I've actually recently undergone the interview process at a few places. So I hope to give some good insight into that, because I think like a lot of people are curious about that right now. Yeah.
Great, awesome. Yeah, I love the variety. We have Michelle, who's more experienced, worked at big companies like Netflix. We have Zando, who's he was the founding engineer of Leland and has kind of built our whole engineering team. We just had 4 engineers start this week, and so is very involved in the engineering recruiting process. And then Jason, who just went through it himself. Sweet. Okay, well, let's jump in. Actually, to start, we'd love to hear about you. So I know there have already been a lot of comments in the chat, but if you've not already sent a message, we'd love to know where you're calling from and or what is your dream company that you want to work at.
As you answer, the correct answer is obviously Netflix. So just so you know, you can cheat. It's fine. It's the right answer.
Or Leland, or Leland. You can come work for us. Incredible. I'm loving the 99 plus messages we have. Okay, wow, we've got people from all over the world. I've seen Greece, I've seen South Africa, Turkey, Portugal, Vermont, Peru. Wow, okay, exciting. Very exciting. Great, we'll keep them coming. We'll jump ahead. So if you are not familiar with Leland, just a very quick explanation. We hope that Leland can become and is your one-stop shop to help you with your career and personal goals. Our number one most common offering is one-on-one coaching. You can find coaches with expertise in a variety of different backgrounds. Today, we have some of our software engineering coaches. We're active in over 50 different categories. And they can help you work towards your goals. We also have live cohort-based courses. We'll be talking about our software engineering bootcamp that we have coming up. And then finally, we have a content library called Leland Plus, where you can go watch mock interviews, see example resumes, take-home challenges, drills, questions, etc. And every day, this is getting better and stronger as the company keeps growing and as we bring more coaches onto the platform. And more importantly is that it's working. I'm actually a former Leland customer. I used Leland when I was applying to business school and for PM recruiting. And we've had tens of thousands of customers who've used Leland to achieve their to land offers at their dream companies or get accepted into their dream schools. Here are just some examples of some of those customers. Okay, well, we know it's a competitive market, and so here's some of the things that you can be doing with your coach, the skills to be building. We'll talk more about this all later. But if you have any questions about how this whole process works or interested in learning more, you can schedule a free strategy call with the Leland team member here. Just scan this QR code. We'll also have this link at the very end of the meeting. Okay, well, let's jump right into the panel, the reason we are all here. So very first question, Michelle, actually, let's do all 3 panelists on this one. Michelle, why don't you start us off again? How'd you break into software engineering and what was your path to your current role?
So I actually went to art school and I really wanted a job in entertainment. So I accepted this job as a support engineer at an animation studio. I was like, this is the way I'm going to get right into animation. And then I realized how much fun engineering was. And I learned Python on the job as a support engineer. And I started learning more and more. I went to different entertainment companies. I went to a startup that helped restaurants. And then I ended up at Netflix. And I really love the freedom that this company gives me to build great things and help the artists all over the world.
That's great. Zando?
Yeah, I started studying computer science in college, doing my undergrad. Really felt like it applied to my skill set and I enjoyed it and felt like there were a number of great opportunities. I had some internships early on at some larger companies, as I mentioned at the beginning. Enjoyed those experiences a lot, felt like I learned a ton and, felt some measure of validation with those, but also felt like my skill set could be better applied at a smaller stage. So I've been working at a number of startups since then, building, running engineering teams, and been with Leland for 3.5 years. And we have, as Mike mentioned, built out our engineering team and are growing pretty significantly now.
Awesome. Yep. And Jason, why don't you wrap us up?
Yeah, so pretty similar to Zando. I studied CS and stats in college. I just thought, at least in the beginning, I thought, what is the major that would give me the least amount of time in school and make me the most money after school? I mean, sounds very transactional, but I think a lot of people in computer science think the same way. But then honestly, I don't know if this was just like by like just like forcing myself to do it and taking classes, but I actually really started to enjoy it. And I realized there's not anything else I'd actually rather study. So, in sophomore year of high school, or sorry, college, landed my first internship, at Amazon. And then have sort of just been exploring different sides of this company ever since. Funnily enough, I was actually supposed to join a startup after graduation, but then there's a significant there's a significant sort of conflict between the founders, and the company was dissolved before I even graduated. So I came back to Amazon, and I think that kind of reveals one of the things that can happen to the smaller companies. So, down to talk about that, anything else. But yeah, it's my journey so far.
Super interesting. Yeah, I love the different range of experience we have. Okay, well, let's jump right into this question. What are the most essential skills that an aspiring software engineer should focus on developing? Michelle, I'm really curious to hear your perspective on this because you didn't start with an engineering background and then you like pivoted in later. So tell us more about that journey of developing the skills you need to break into product or break into engineering.
Yeah, the big thing is about knowing how to learn and loving learning and being open to learning new tools and products all the time. My first two languages were Perl and Python, and learning how to do pipeline and working on a private cloud is even before AWS. And now I'm working on distributed systems and Java. And you just really never know what tools you're gonna be working on. You could be hired for one thing and then suddenly you need something else, so it's all about being open to learning and knowing that if you've learned something before, you can learn it again. If you've done something hard before, you can do it again. So if you get this project or this job that has all these skills that you don't have and you're not sure about it, just take one step at a time, look at it and say, hey, I can do this. I've done this before. And you can do it because, solving problems is the generalized skill. And once you have that, you can learn any technology.
Yep, yeah, totally agree. Like it's really learning how to learn. Jason, Zando, anything you guys would add?
I mean, I think obviously you got to learn programming and learn how to do that. But I agree with what Michelle says. There are certain jobs that'll look for developers who are proficient in a certain language. There are a lot of other jobs that will take people who are proficient in any number of kind of the core languages with the expectation that you'll be able to learn whatever their specific stack is on the job. And it's really about being adaptable and learning. Once you have proficiency in a common language, then learning a new one and becoming adept at that is just a matter of syntax.
Yep. Awesome. Jason, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I was just gonna add one small thing. I would say like something else to definitely not overlook is communication, especially on the job. You'd be surprised, like, I'm sure everyone knows about the stereotypes that go behind software engineers and this whole industry, but at least from my internship experiences and my current full-time experience, like asking yourself, like, what am I doing and what is the ultimate purpose of all this? Like, what impact am I creating? And then finding out the answer, talking to your manager about that answer, and then clearly defining some like roads, like signposts, like goalposts, whatever you want to call it. That's going to get you a lot more like, bang for your buck, so to speak, because they're going to see that you actually put thought into doing something. And that ultimately is what I've noticed, especially the more senior levels of any big tech company. It's not even really like the most technically apt people that are oftentimes getting promoted. It's the people who are really, really good at knowing what to do and like maximizing their visibility on the job that ends up, getting them those promotions. And I'm not like some tenured Swede or anything, but I think that is something I will throw in there.
Yeah, super interesting. Right. Okay, moving on to the next question. This is something we hear all the time, which is like networking is important, especially in like a lot of different roles. But talk to us specifically about software engineering. Like how is it similar to other industries? How is it different? What are best practices? What do you recommend here? Zando, why don't we start with you, and then Jason, Michelle, if there's anything you want to add.
Yeah, this is a great one. This is one that I think is, as going with stereotypes, might be a little bit more uncomfortable potentially at times for the stereotypical software engineer. But this is coming back to that communication point. You really got to have the soft skills and the people skills at least to market yourself. And networking is the number one area where that happens. Sharing a quick anecdote from my experience, I was trying to, break in, get my first internship experience. And a lot of times you get to the point where you need to get experience in order to get the experience. They're not going to accept somebody that doesn't have experience on their resumes. How do you get that first one? And networking was a difference maker for me. Part of that was going out and meeting people and just asking them about their career, what they're doing. And natural connections are born from that, and opportunities will come. But one of the keys with that is it's got to be genuine. I think that's something that might feel a little unnatural. But if you're a curious person, just asking questions about people's jobs. We've all got people in our network, friends of friends, connections of connections, people who we could reach out to that are doing things in an area that we are interested in. Reaching out to them and asking, how'd you get started in this? How did you do this? What was your process like? What do you do on a day-to-day basis? Learning all that kind of stuff will lead to, have the knock-on effect of putting you in their minds. When other opportunities come up that they're not open for, they'll think of you and maybe pass those on your way. So really, networking was the birth of my software engineering, experience, and has led to everything for me. And I get it's a little bit potentially unnatural when you're, used to thinking about logic and a computer. But it's exercising those people skills that can be a real game changer.
Yeah, I feel like networking is like what makes the difference for a lot of people. Obviously, like if you're going to a really great school like an MIT or a Stanford, you're more likely to have recruiters come directly to you. If you are like me and the other like 99% plus of the world, you have to take more initiative and kind of make those connections and introductions happen. It's awesome. Thank you, Xander.
Wait, can I add
Michelle?
one other
Oh,
comment?
yeah.
Sorry, I
Yeah,
just
then we'll
thought
pass
of
it to
this.
Michelle. Yeah.
One other comment I'll make on this is even I think when you hear networking, part of the allure is to say, okay, I'm going to network with people who are in a position where they can offer me something, and you're going to target those people. That's not the only way to go about networking, and that can feel very transactional for the other people on that side of the relationship. A lot of my greatest opportunities have come from friendships and connections I've made that were just natural, talking with people in the industry. Leland, as an example, started with some people I've known for 11 years. That's a relationship going back a long time. And we've been aware of each other and friends for a very long time. And then this opportunity was born out of that. So there's no real wasted effort in networking, is where I'd sum that up.
Yeah. I'm loving all the chats where people are dropping their LinkedIn and connecting with each other. I think there's so much to be said about that horizontal side. Okay, yes, Michelle, let's pass it to you.
Okay, I'm going to say a couple things. One thing is just to think about the numbers. If you look at our participants today, I have 600 people here. Imagine you all sent me your resume. How many of those do you think I'm going to be looking at? How many of those do you think I'm going to be skimming and then just being, well, this one looks good, and just start interviewing just to get the process going along. By networking, you get that face-to-face connection. You're making those friends. You can do all sorts of things. And just kind of to add on to what he was saying is that networking isn't any different than friendship. Think about how you made your first friends in high school and college, at your workplace. You just introduce yourself, you just start talking. That's how it is. and then just being in the right locations. You know, if you just start messaging me on LinkedIn and we've never had a conversation before, I'm gonna think you're a robot. Like you get all those all the time. But if you're at a meetup, if you're at a conference, you have an event like this where I know you're like an actual person and that we have something in common, you're more likely to be able to build that connection. And that's really the best part of going to events like this.
Yep. Yeah, so true. I have a friend who he was working at Google as part of their like product management program, and then Google opened their application, and within the next 24 hours, he had like 99 plus LinkedIn DMs of people like trying to get a referral from him. And not to say that he would never be willing to meet with any of them, but the timing of it was just like so bad. Where if those people had been a little more thoughtful, built a relationship earlier on, when the time came that the application opened, getting the referral is so much easier and the person is so much more likely to talk to them. Yes. Huge, huge plus one there. Okay, Jason, anything you'll add or anything you want to add? If not, we can move on.
I'm just gonna echo what you said about referrals. I think like building a strong referral network is like the single best thing I got out of college. That and just making friends in general. But like never underestimate the power of a strong referral. That's like what Michelle was saying. Like if there's 600 people in your queue that you have to like review, you're gonna go with the people that somebody that said, hey, you should look at this person. And so that's like I feel like in this economy, that's like almost all the hiring is done that way, especially during like bearish markets. So yeah, like never, I'm not saying be transactional, but like there's been so many times in college where I took the extra initiative to go to that party, to go to that lunch, and I met somebody who ended up, helping me out years down the road with just a very simple referral that got me somewhere. So yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, love it. Okay, next question. And this is one we get all of the time. So there are various ways to learn software engineering. We've got self-study. I feel like this is becoming more common with ChatGPT and other AI tools and learning platforms. Boot camps, traditional education like college. Okay, let's talk about which ones are right for the like different people. Anyone here have strong opinions? If not, we can pass it to you, Jason.
I can go real quick. I have a
Yeah.
strong opinion. Okay, so I always tell people to not start on the left about the ways to learn, but instead start on the right of where you want to go and think about what your end goals are. Do you want to work at Netflix? Do you want to work at a startup? Do you want to move across the country? Do you want to start your own startup? Do you want to, do your own company, something totally, have it go huge, or do a lifestyle company? There's all sorts of ways that tech can lead to your goals. So I always say people start at the end, figure out where you want to get, and then work your way back. So if there's a job at a big company you want to work at, you go look at the jobs that they have available. What are the languages they're looking for? What are their skills they're looking for? Then, okay, work your way back. Look, I'm going to do a project in that language, or I'm going to do this. And if I want to start a company, think about, okay, what is maybe a no code way of doing a prototype to get myself started, to get it going, and then start learning basics. So it's really all about figuring out what your end goal is first, because there's too many ways to learn and too many things to learn that you can't do it all. It's overwhelming. And then just figuring out the way that you learn best. Like I personally learn best with projects. I like to pick something annoying in my life and then fix it with code, as opposed to doing tutorials and learning through the way someone else writes. It's harder for me to follow along. So it's really about figuring out what helps the knowledge get into your brain the best. And if you have to try 5 different ways until you get there, just keep going until you find the way that's best for you.
Yeah, that's so great and so true. I mean, maybe I'm reading too much into this, but the fact that you started your career wanting to go into entertainment and you are now at Netflix, like it feels like that has got to have helped in the recruiting process to say, I'm like deeply passionate about the entertainment industry. I started my career there. Now, like, look at these skills I have. I can be so helpful. Yeah, that's great. Anything, Zando, Jason? If not, let's move to the next question.
Yeah, I'll jump in here real quick as well. There are the boot camps have become much more of a thing in recent years. and by more of a thing, I mean more of an established path for breaking into software engineering. I think the one thing that I would call out with both boot camps and self-study, you most likely you can't look at that as like a 3-month thing and then you're gonna boom, you get a job at your ideal company. Everybody that's going to be interviewing wants to see or wants to hire somebody that has knowledge and is adept at programming and good at that. It's going to take a lot of work on your own. I'd say boot camp is self-study as well. It's guided self-study, but it's going to require a lot of work outside of that. But echoing what Michelle was saying, the real goal here is to figure out how to learn and then do that as much as you can. So I don't think there's one specific way that is the right way for everybody. I think there is kind of one specific end state that is right for everybody, and that is becoming a proficient software engineer.
Yeah, that's so good. My little brother is in the middle of software engineering recruiting right now, and he's coming to the realization that a computer science degree is not going to guarantee like a phenomenal computer science job. And that's been like this shocking realization of it's like, wait, I thought if I got good grades, people would come begging to me for jobs and internships. And what he's realizing is like the self-study, self-driven learning is so important in this. Like we might even argue that self-study boot camps and traditional education in a lot of ways are all the same thing of like there's so much self-driven parts to it. And like Michelle said, you got to know where you're going. Okay, let's get very tactical now. Actually, Jason, I do want to hear your perspective on this one because you just went through it. Talk us through the traditional software engineering hiring process.
Yeah, so for context, I just recently completed 2 interview loops at Meta and Palantir. But I've interviewed at 10 plus companies in the last 3 years. Usually it starts off with like a online assessment where they send you like 2 or 3 data structures questions that you have to complete within the time frame, usually like an hour. If you pass that, then it's either the first round interview that's like one data structures question on a live call with an engineer that spans 45 minutes to an hour. And then depending on how pretentious the company is, they might schedule a on-site with 3 of those next. And then honestly, at that point, it's just like it's I just think like they try to filter out the candidates based on like how much can you physically do in a short amount of time. And I think it's, I have my own thoughts about that, but for better or for worse, that's what ends up being. And also something to differentiate is internship versus full-time recruiting. Internship recruiting usually has a much lower bar, and they understand that interns don't really know as much, hence why they're trying to get an internship. So usually you can get away. Most places will just have like 3 rounds maximum, which consist of usually 1 interview per round. And then there's also a behavioral component to most of these interviews as well. But for full-time recruiting, for all the FANG companies and like I guess like the big tech or whatever, you can expect to have an online assessment, first round phone screen, and then an on-site that consists of I know at Amazon it's usually 5 to 6 interviews in one day. At Google, it's around the same. At Meta, it's like 4 interviews. And then they'll have a behavioral component as well. So like an hour breaking down your previous experiences, talking about, past projects, what you want of your next job, what's your work style. And then to top it all off, as if that isn't enough, like they usually have a hiring manager interview at the very end. And that person, it can kind of suck sometimes because sometimes you just like, you've gone through like 6 interviews at this point, and the hiring manager is the one that ends up deciding most of it. Like you can do perfectly well in everything, and the hiring manager can just like, woke up on the wrong side of the bed that day and like decide not to pass you forward. It's happened to me, unfortunately, but that ends up being the current state of software engineering recruiting. I think your mileage may vary depending where you interview, but that's usually what to expect.
Yep. Okay, that's awesome. Really appreciate the deep dive there. So now, oh, sorry, I thought we had one more question. Let's talk about therefore what of like how should we be preparing for this? Zando, Michelle, anything you guys want to say about like best practices for preparing for the different phases of interviews?
I can give a couple tips as the person who's doing the interviews at this point. I just did one yesterday. Don't forget about system design. It might not come up in your first interview, or it's definitely going to come up in your second job, third, fourth, fifth, all the rest of your jobs. So definitely check out system design. And also, the behavioral component might seem separate, but that's actually a little bit of a trick. They're judging your behavior the entire time. It doesn't matter if it's a coding question. If you sit there silently for 45 minutes, if you interrupt the interviewer, if you do things that are just like, don't show that you are going to be fun to work with, it doesn't matter if you get the answer right. They're not going to pass you along. So definitely think about it. And also just remember that most questions you get, technical questions, they're a little bit of a trick because they want you to ask questions. That is the first thing to do. You need to get the entire concept because that's what happens in real life. You get half a request, sometimes people are like, can you just do this? And you're like, but why? What are you talking about? What's going on? So showing those skills are really important, and not just the coding, but obviously do as much lead code as you can because that's just part of the interview process.
Yeah, totally. I've been shocked at how much like the interpersonal dynamics really matter in the interview, especially like being on the other side of the table. You get some candidates who come in and you immediately know, like, I do not want to spend another minute with this person, even if they give me the most perfect answers. Like the interpersonal is so huge. Great, Zando, anything you would add?
Yeah, I just want to double down on that. I know we talked about communication earlier, and there are gonna be echoes of that all the way through this. I wish I could tell you that you need to know one skill and that's gonna be it. If you're a good programmer, you got the job. Most of the time, that's not the case. It's personal skills are a huge deal. You're gonna be even if it's in a remote setting, you're going to be interfacing with people every day. But if you're in an office, you're with people every day. They're going to want to be okay with having you around and feel like they have an understanding of your personality. And then your working style as well. You're going to be working with people. It's a collaborative field. It's also a creative field, and understanding how you think about problems, how you break things down, your process through it all is going to be very important. I think with most questions, there's, at least if the interviews are designed well, there's not just like a one specific answer they're trying to drive you to that is like, oh, you got it. Okay, good. You passed, you got the key that unlocked it. It's much more about the process and getting to a correct solution, and being able to, number one, get there, and number two, talk through and explain and communicate while you're getting there, is a huge part of the process.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, well, we've had about 200 people join since we initially kicked off the meeting about 30 minutes ago. So if you have not already heard, Leland is going to be doing a boot camp about breaking into software engineering. Very tactically, this is like an interview prep boot camp, much more than like a coding boot camp. So to talk through, here's some of the things that are being covered. The first session is all about getting the interview, resume, networking, projects, all of that. Next, we'll talk about behavioral interviews. How do you make sure the recruiter likes you, moves you on? After that, we'll get very technical about the different types of technical interviews and how to approach those. And then finally, we'll do like an office hours where if there's anything that you have missed, we will be covering those. We recognize in events like this where we have such limited time, we're not able to go as deep as many people would want. And so this is the solution to that of we can get as deep as people want and really hone in the exact skills that you need. And also to be clear, these are more workshop based of you will be given questions broken out into groups. You'll have drills and homework to be preparing for it. So this is how much it would cost if you decided to do it like it all paying individually, if you were by like all 8 hours of live instruction, the mock interviews, the custom drills, etc. We're selling it for $400, $399. And again, we are also raffling off a free bootcamp entry. So if you have not entered that, there's a link to it in the chat where you'll be able to enter it. So, oh, here's also the link right here. So enter to win. It costs you nothing to enter, and incredible opportunity for you to prepare for interviews. All right. Okay, we just talked about this. Moving on to the next question. How do you recommend that an aspiring software engineer get experience on their resume? Zando, you talked about this a little bit of sometimes it takes experience to get experience. Why don't we start with you, Jason, and then Zando, Michelle, if there's anything you want to add.
Yeah. So, in the beginning, I think like one of my best friends in college said this to me when I was a freshman, and he said beggars can't be choosers. And I think like that is sort of the mindset you have to operate under in the beginning at least. Any experience you can get unpaid, is totally fine. Paid, that's awesome. Just absolutely do it. Reach out to uh like any people that you know who are trying to create their own entrepreneurial project, like anything from a personal project that's supposed to benefit the community to a school-based initiative. Reaching out to people in the local community is also another way I've seen people get significant experience. Another thing that I've seen is reaching out to your school's IT department. A lot of times they just take interns because they're super understaffed, and that's unfortunately the reality of like college IT most of the time. So that is actually a pretty good way to get some experience. And then I'll let Zando and Michelle talk about other aspects of the experience. But one last thing, I think personal projects are a must in the beginning. And I don't mean going on YouTube and looking up Amazon React clone because a million people have already made those. Try to think of something in your life that you wish there was a solution for, and see if you can at least like prototype a solution. And I feel like this is so easy nowadays, given that there's like ChatGPT all over the place. Like it's super easy to get something working. So yeah, like spending 5 more minutes thinking about the actual impact of a project is going to make it a lot more worthwhile of your time.
Awesome. Yes, so good.
Can I jump on top of that? Because I really want to build on what Jason said about the personal project. The advice I usually give everyone is to make sure that your project lives on the web. Do not forget about cloud computing and that things need to be off of your personal computer. That's the thing that I think one of the gaps between what college is teaching now and what you need in the workplace is that experience working with the cloud and working with actually getting your work done. So make sure that you can deploy it. Doesn't matter how small your personal project is. If it lives in the world, it has a few endpoints, make sure to have a database, make sure it has a load balancer. Just like all the tiny little pieces, they can be very small. But I love talking to people in interviews where they tell me about this project where they, have 5 endpoints and it just does the smallest thing. And then we can talk about it. Like, how was it for you? What did you learn doing this? Tell me how you'd scale it if you had 1 million users. It's one of my favorite questions for a tip. That'll come up in interviews. So just make sure that you get the whole scope of what the job is going to expect you to have. So do that research.
Totally. I also think like there's so much to be said about personal projects being able to show personality. Like, here's something I'm deeply passionate about. Look at this thing that I made. Like, they're just so much more like three-dimensional as a human. Okay, great. Let's jump to the next question. Are there any specific qualities or traits that set successful candidates apart during the hiring process? Zanda, why don't we start with you?
Yes. Yes, this is one that I'm very happy to talk about. And I feel like I've mentioned it in every question that I've answered today. And it's communication, interpersonal skills. Those are huge. It's not that those are like a big thing that's going to give you a leg up on the competition. That's table stakes. You have to have those kinds of skills. And if you feel uncomfortable talking to new people or meeting new people, that's a skill that can be developed, just like your programming skills. And it's going to take some practice. It might be uncomfortable, but that's worth doing. It's also, just like you do practice interviews for doing leak code style questions, mock interviews that way. Do some mock interviews that are more behavioral. Practice what you would say for certain things, and answer those questions. Okay, as far as specific traits go, beyond that kind of a skill-based thing, something that I think was really important about what Michelle was saying. When you have a personal project that you can talk about in an interview setting, that shows your curiosity. That shows that you are a problem solver. You have a willingness to learn, and also gives you something to talk about that'll show off your skill set better than just talking about what your skills are. Show that, in your life, you have hobbies, you are passionate about something. You have a curiosity that applies to any number of things, but also applies to software engineering. And being able to show that in the interview, I think is a very important piece in what makes a well-rounded candidate.
Yeah, I love that you talked about very tactically, like these are things we can practice. If you're not good at interviewing, interviewing is a skill that you develop, just like if you're not good at coding, it's a skill. Yeah, Jason.
Yeah, I just wanted to add one small thing. Just be a human. Like I know that sounds really intuitive, but like I had an interview a week ago, where I was just like, "Hey, how's your day?" And then I tried to make some, small talk in the beginning, and at the end, the person was like, "You're the first person that said hello to me today during the interviews." And you have to realize like these people are working full time also. They're probably under some immense amount of stress on their own projects, dealing with their own managers. Everyone has a life outside of this, and they're being pulled into this interview because they literally have to, and it's like part of how the company works. So like it's not all about you, is all I'm saying. Like I would actually argue contextualizing the interview in the beginning is the best way to succeed. Like if you just go in and you just stare at them, like yeah, it's probably not going to go very well. So like, it's kind of you get what you put into it.
That's such a phenomenal tip. Michelle's nodding her head. I can tell she agrees. Anything you'd add, Michelle?
Yeah, really tactical is being able to listen and respond to feedback. So this happens in interviews all the time. The candidate is doing a tactical answer and they get stuck, they go in the wrong direction, or you can tell that they're like freezing. So what I do as an interviewer is I give them a hint. I say, "Hey, have you thought about this? Or maybe this," it's like a small hint. If they take it and then go, "Oh, yeah, okay," and then they can move on, that shows they're listening. So that actually I like that just as much as if they were able to just go through the whole thing without any mistakes, because that shows that they're human, they hear, they listen, and they respond well to feedback.
Oh, good. Yes. Okay. Now I would love just to do rapid fire with all three of you. Again, why don't we do the same order? So let's start with Xanda, then Jason, then Michelle. Final tips, or I guess as part of this, common mistakes you see people make and how they should address them.
Yeah, the one thing that I'll say, especially relevant in today's kind of job market and hiring climate, rejection is for sure going to be part of your story here. You're not unique because you were rejected. You are unique if you never get rejected, and probably a unicorn because that doesn't exist. That doesn't happen. In my experience, when I shared the story about networking getting me my first internship experience, I had applied to a number of places online, just throwing out my resume. And as Michelle was saying earlier, when you get a bunch of resumes as a hiring manager, as a recruiter, they're all faceless. They mean nothing to me. It's words on a page or numbers on a page, and it's kind of a crapshoot, and not great odds for getting through to that next round. And all it takes is that first step to break in, and then things can change in your favor. So be tactical about it. Be smart about how you're going about this. Talk to somebody who's been there and done it before. Get a mentor that can walk you through that process, and then be resilient and persistent. Know that rejection is going to come, and embrace it as a learning experience instead of letting it get you down.
Great. Yeah, just one note on that. Xando talked about like having someone to help you know where to go next. We've been getting a lot of questions in the DMs or I've been getting a lot of DMs of questions that are very specific, like how should I be preparing for upcoming Amazon interviews? That is a phenomenal question that is probably best handled reaching out to a coach, talking one-on-one about your situation, where you're at, what skills you're missing, and how you should be preparing. So Amanda's done a great job of dropping the coach's link or profile links. If you've not already checked those out, you 100% should be. Okay, Jason, let's jump to you.
Yeah, I'm gonna give a tip that is probably not as is like probably a little unorthodox, but there's like grind lead code, practice your behavioral questions, get those strong referrals, all of that. But something that I've noticed, I have a friend who is doing a recruiter internship at a big tech company right now, and I was actually having a conversation with her about a month ago, I would say, and she told me that apparently LinkedIn Apply like, you know how you can apply to jobs on LinkedIn sometimes? Yeah, so apparently that ends up going nowhere most of the time. It just like people send tens of thousands of these resumes into the void and they're never looked at, and people wonder, hey, where did these people go? They never got back to me. Well, the answer is like there was never a recruiter actually assigned to look at any of those. So the solution is to only apply on the official company link and get a referral doing it. Like there's probably so many good applicants that have just unfortunately slipped through the cracks by doing LinkedIn apply. I honestly don't even know why they have it, and it's just it's kind of pains me to see that. But yeah, wait for official coordination from the companies and only apply on the official site is what I would say.
Yeah, I think especially with the amount of tools that have come out where you submit your resume and then they use AI to apply to like 10,000 different jobs. Like more and more companies are like, I'm not even looking at this unless I know it's a very intentional application. Okay, Michelle, wrap us
So
up.
yeah, so when I was applying for engineering jobs, I knew it was going to be difficult because I didn't have a computer science degree, and that usually just throws my resume right out the window. It's gone. No one even looks at it. So for me, it was all about that hustle and finding another way to get people to pay attention to me, and that's where branding comes in. So things like writing blog posts, creating tutorials, having a YouTube show, having conference talks. So my goal was to get myself out there so that people would find me and I would talk to people. And that works. Like that was a goal I set. It takes way longer than applying for a job if that person, you get the interview. And it's a long-term goal. It took me a year, but someone came up to me after I gave a conference talk and said, "Hey, would you be interested in working at Netflix?" And I was like, "Of course." So that's the sort of thing that's not just the regular path. There are other ways of finding jobs that aren't just applying, because that's the hardest one.
Totally. Yeah, and increasingly so. All right. So we're getting low on time. I want to make sure we have time to announce who our giveaway winner is, and then we can wrap up with just final Q&A. So if you have any dying question or any questions you're dying to ask, go ahead and drop them in the chat while we announce our giveaway winner, and then we can go ahead and answer maybe one or two final questions. Okay, so where's our, okay, yes, the winner is Jesse Tang. Let me drop it in the Jesse Tang. We will reach out to you after the event, email you the details to get you added. Okay, thanks, Amanda. You already dropped it. Perfect. Okay. Sweet. Well, let's jump into final questions. So it looks like I've already received a couple. Let me just pull them up. Okay, where can I go about, and Michelle, you just talked about this a little bit, but someone who is looking to go find places to apply to, like where do I even start to know the right places to be putting my application? Jason, you just mentioned maybe LinkedIn isn't always perfect. So how do I know where to apply or even when to apply when these companies open their applications? Yeah, go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, there's like a GitHub repository. Let me just find the link right now. Anyways, there's this thing that's done by the Computer Science Club at the University of Pittsburgh. For some reason, it's kind of become like a computer science pop culture thing now. It's like this CSC GitHub repository standardizes all of the official like live applications and companies that are hiring. I only use this through our college to apply to jobs, and I think literally everyone I know knows about this. This is probably all you need. Um, but yeah, like it also tracks like if it's open or not. So
That's awesome. I love the communities that make it easier for everyone. Okay, next question. And this I'm open to any of the panelists. If you had your resume completely wiped clean, and you are starting over from scratch, how would you go about re-breaking into software engineering?
So the big thing for me is on a resume is showing impact. And a lot of people talk very specifically about the projects, but they won't talk about either two things. one is the impact it had on the company. Did it make the company $10 million? Did it save the company $10 million? What did it actually do? And then two, what part of the project did you work on, right? Did you design it? Did you manage a bunch of people? Or were you just kind of getting tickets and you did this part and this part and this part, you know? So just showing all that. Maybe I misunderstood the question. I thought it was how to start the resume, but now I'm thinking the question is how would you get experience from the bottom? Is that the other way? I'll answer
Yeah, I
that
mean,
question
yeah.
too, which is like when I was trying to find people, what I started with was going to meetups, and I would go up to people, and my icebreaker, after I said, "Hey, how's it going? Where do you work?" would be, "Can you tell me about other events that you like to go to?" And then I would just like write it down on a document that I had going, and then soon I had a super long document of meetups and conferences that were good. And I still ask this question all the time because it's an organic way of finding places to talk to people, to network. Hey, what are you hiring at? Oh, what kind of skills does that job take? You know, that sort of thing. So that's how I like to organically talk to people and make sure that, you know, at the end of the conversation, there's a way for you to slip in your goals to do that. So like I slip in my goals. I'm like, oh, hey, you know, if you're looking for a coach, I'm available. If you want to slip in your goal, like, hey, I'm looking for a job, anything you have. So, you know, don't let that be the first question, but don't feel bad about letting that be a part of the conversation. You can ask for things. It's okay. Everyone's there to ask for things.
Yeah, there's such a good balance to that of some people, like especially some of the clients I've worked with, you really got to teach them to advocate for themselves. Like it is okay to ask for a referral. And for other people, you're like, you cannot lead the conversation immediately begging for a referral. Build a connection first, then you can talk about it. Uh, so definitely,
Oh, I have a great metaphor for that. Um, would you ask a new friend to drive you to the airport? So think about how far you got in that conversation and whether you built a connection and if you'd ask them to drive you to the airport and if you would not ask them to drive you to the airport, and you probably can't ask them to help you get a job. You know, like just think about how deep that conversation went. I think that's a good way of thinking about it.
yeah, great. Okay, sorry, just pulling up a few other final questions. Okay, any advice on preparing for upcoming system design interviews? Why don't we make this our very last question and then we can wrap it up. Zando, I know you know a lot about this, so why don't we start with you?
Yeah, my advice for this will apply for any type of interview that you're doing. You need to do mock interviews. Going through and reading the, you know, Grok in the system design interview, reading books, reading things that will help you have the right way of thinking about things is incredibly important. But doing things live in an interview setting is different than just reading about it or doing things theoretically. Um, it's it's so worthwhile to do practice interviews. It'll get your jitters out a little bit. It'll help you with more clear ways of communicating ideas. A lot of times we're going to have in system design interviews, you're going to have similar problems. They're going to be a new application that is going to borrow things from stuff that you've seen if you've been practicing in other scenarios. And knowing how to talk about those things is going to be very important. It's weird doing coding exercises, doing system design, doing work in front of other people where they're examining you. It's uncomfortable. We all feel that. The interviewer feels a little bit uncomfortable doing that also. It's not like a foreign thing. It's an uncomfortable thing. And so do the practice. Get on a mock interview with somebody, do it live with another person, and experience what that is like in that uncomfortable setting.
Yeah, that's so good. We once had a coach in one of these events who said, don't just practice till you can do it. Practice till you can't do it wrong. Like every once in a while you'll get a question and you hear it and you feel that like immediate stomach dropping moment of like, I have no clue how to solve this. And you need to drill in like the muscle memory of, okay, can take a breath. I know how to approach not knowing how to solve this and like eventually work your way through the problem. That's so good. And also like take advantage of coaches. Like how cool is it that you have coaches like Michelle who are like interviewers at Netflix? They know what the bar looks like. And so you can know if you are hitting the bar or not. Yeah, that's great. Jason, Michelle, anything that you would add?
Hey, this is for system design. Is that the
Yeah,
question?
yeah.
Um, when I was practicing for system design, I did most of my prep like a month and a half ago. This is relatively new. So the thing that Zando said about the grokking system design interview, that's like sort of the like golden standard. But there's this YouTube channel that recently popped up called Jordan Has No Life, and it's this like Google software engineer who literally made like 100 videos on designing every single application. I think at least like skimming those videos is going to bring you some value because he goes pretty in depth, and I found it pretty helpful.
That's so good. Okay, well, it looks like we are basically at time, so we are going to wrap up the call. Thank you so much to our panelists for joining. We have really appreciated your time and thoughtfulness and responses. To everyone here, if you, why don't we just drop some love for the panelists in the chat? And then if you want to be able to talk to them one-on-one, you can reach out to them through their profiles. All right, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.